I'm Leslie Goldeman for Brian. It is Kilmeade and Friends. The number is 866-408-7669. Delighted to meet in person and have in studio Colonel Allen West, who is currently the president and CEO of the National Center for Policy Analysis. Of course, former congressman from Florida and lieutenant colonel in the Army. Welcome.
Good to be with you, Leslie.
You were at the Stop Iran rally yesterday. There were how many people there?
The estimate was close to 12,000.
Wow.
The announcement was it was the largest rally in Times Square in the history of New York City.
Interesting that it hasn't, as of yet, gotten the coverage as such. I saw a lot more coverage of Occupy, which had fewer people.
Yes, but Occupy fits into the liberal progressive political message and agenda,
right,
as opposed to, people, Americans coming out, after work or whatever and there were people that came in from other places, and there were also about 4 or 5 other Stop Iran rallies all across the nation.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's interesting. So the protest was to get the Iran deal stopped. I saw the signs that were specifically calling out Chuck Schumer to kill it and to lead the effort to kill it. And Chuck Schumer is famous for saying that his family has been guarding the gates of Jerusalem for generations or something.
Good rhetoric.
Right. So you were there. I thought it was extraordinary that many people were marshaled. What happened, and what do you expect to happen? Well,
you had an incredible group of individuals. I mean, when you can get Alan Dershowitz on the same stage as Allen West, I mean, that's just say a lot right there.
Yeah.
And I think that what we have to let the Obama administration know is that the American people are not happy with this. The American people are very concerned about their future security and safety when you are dealing with the number one state sponsor of terrorism, a country that since 1979 has been at war with the United States of America. And in 1979, they held 53 hostages. They still are holding 4 hostages today. They don't feel that this agreement was done with the best interests of the American people, as opposed to a legacy item for the president. Now, of course, when you look at the 60 days that started on Monday for the House and Senate to review this agreement and then have a vote on it, well, the president kind of sidestepped them without a doubt by going to the United Nations, and of course the EU has already voted, and it's almost a fait accompli because new markets are going to be opened up through these countries, and especially Russia and China and other European countries. Billions of dollars of new revenue, hundreds of billions of revenues are going to be lifted so that because the sanctions are over, and this whole thing about snapback, that's not going to happen.
Oh well, I can't see how that's a practical reality at all. Snapback sanctions, because Iran will have entered into new agreements with Russia, with China. There'll be money flowing to both sides. Nobody's going to want those sanctions to snap back. So that's illusionary.
And the whole thing about the snapback in the agreement is that it has to be done by a committee. And who is part of the committee for approval of the sanctions to go back in? Iran.
Oh, good.
So, I mean,
well, aren't they part of the committee that allows them to stop people to stop the IAEA from inspecting their facilities?
Absolutely. And furthermore, part of this agreement is that the United States of America and the other countries are supposed to protect Iran from any type of internet or the Stuxnet type of cyber attacks against their nuclear program.
Okay, so then what good is the congressional review at all? Once the UN releases the sanctions and the other countries are part of this deal, money is going to flow into Iran. Does it even matter what the U.S. does at this point?
Well, it does in a way. And if you have a president that will, take that to heart, what the United States of America could do is, of course, institute, the sanctions against Iran as long as we can survive a presidential veto. We can also have sanctions against companies and other entities, states that are doing business with Iran, much the same as what we did with the apartheid country of South Africa.
Okay.
But I do find it quite hypocritical that we have this BDS movement going on, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel, but yet we just lifted all the sanctions against Iran, pretty much so.
It's stunning. The other thing that's stunning, as a former congressman, you can attest to this, is that, okay, part of it is President Obama doing an end run around Congress, allowing the UN Security Council to vote on the deal before Congress review period has even started, actually. It was like on day one.
Yep.
So that essentially neutered their review power. But there was also a sort of self-inflicted wound, I thought, by Congress as well. When they adopted the Corker bill,
absolutely,
they went from having to have 2/3 of the Senate to affirmatively approve a treaty, which is what the Constitution calls for on Congress, to the inverse. So I don't want to make it too complicated for people listening, but at the end of the process now,
the threshold is harder on the House and Senate than it would have been if they had treated this as a treaty.
Right. To override a presidential veto, they now need 2/3 against the deal.
Correct.
Right, which is going to be impossible. You only need 1/3 plus one person to like the deal for it to stand. So it's much harder to kill this way. Why did Congress surrender its constitutional power to affirm treaties?
Well, there's a lot of questions about why is Congress abdicating so much of its legislative power. We saw that with the power of the purse when it came to the Cromnibus bill. We saw that with the defunding of the illegal immigration executive order, and now we see it this time. So you would have to have Senator Corker sitting here and explain that to you, because I can't get inside his head why he would do that.
Well, there was some argument that this wasn't going to be called a treaty, therefore they wouldn't have treaty ratification power over
Well, they needed to force it to be so. Once again, as the legislative branch, and when you look at the, Article 1, Section 8 duties and responsibilities, these are the type of things that the Congress, it's enumerated power to them that they are abdicating over to the executive branch. And so now you have a situation where the president only needs 34 Democrats in the Senate. And you're going to have to get in the House of Representatives, I believe, up to about 55 to 57 Democrats to cross over, because the threshold in the House is 291. And when I was there, I mean, we could not even get a balanced budget amendment to pass on a 2/3 majority vote.
The president is lawless, as we know, but this seems especially lawless. Now we find out about these side deals that, from what I'm reading, materially affect Iran's military weaponization. And they're not only left out of the deal that Congress approves, but they aren't even actively disclosed by the president or John Kerry. We have to have 2 congressmen fly to Vienna to find out that they exist. So is this unusual?
Well, this is the most transparent administration that the world has ever known.
Right.
Look, it is not just that, but if you do some research, you will find out the reason why those 3 hikers that were, apprehended by the Iranians were released, because we gave back, scientists and some other individuals that had been arrested because of their dealings with the Iranian nuclear program. Look, this is what happens in the near term. Iran becomes an economic power in the near term because of the sanction money that's going to be released back to them, because of the new markets. God help us if Iranian oil ends up one day on the streets of the United States of America. In the midterm, what happens, the UN weapons embargo that was not supposed to be a part of this. The Obama administration has agreed that the conventional weapons embargo is lifted in year 5, which, really, Iran has been, selling and weapons going out to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis already.
Well, their deputy foreign minister spoke out yesterday and says it's lifted now, basically.
Well, that's how they feel.
We can buy weapons whenever possible and provide them to whomever we want, whenever we want.
So they're going to be a military power. The ballistic missiles at year 8, that embargo is supposed to be lifted, but based upon that statement, it'll happen. And in year 10, the centrifuges go back to full capacity and spinning. But already during the process of these negotiations, you've seen a 20% increase in the uranium enrichment.
And we talked about this when I was in last week for Brian. It seems just insanely crazy to me that we don't allow our military to carry weapons, especially when we know that they are targets.
Yes, absolutely right. And this is what I want everyone to understand. We're not talking about everyone walking around with a 9mm or M4, but you should have designated duty personnel that are there. You should have someone at the entry-exit point that is armed, that is able to secure. The fact that this Abdul Aziz was able to plow through the fence to get inside that reserve center and open fire against, unarmed Marines. And thank God, I guess the one guy did have his own personal concealed weapon that was on his person, but it was not a weapon that came out of the arms room. And this is not the first time it has happened, Leslie. It happened back in June of 2009 when Carlos Bledsoe converted to Islam, traveled to Somalia, traveled to Yemen, came back into the United States of America and shot 2 soldiers at a Little Rock recruiting station, killing 1. Right then, the Obama administration, if they cared about our men and women in uniform, should have reviewed that entire process and said, we got to do better protecting our men and women at these recruiting stations. But that wasn't enough. Then all of a sudden, December 2009, Nadal Hassan.
Right.
And we still didn't do anything.
I only have a few seconds with you, but after Chattanooga, the Pentagon recommended that Marines at recruiting stations not wear their uniforms.
And close the blinds.
Yeah, for now, which the word that came to my mind was pathetic. What did you think?
Cowardly. Because when you understand the aura of the Marine. There's a reason why they earned the name Devil Dogs from World War I in Belleau Woods. There's a reason why at Chosin Reservoir, when they were surrounded, the general said, we can attack in any direction. That's the spirit of the Marine.
Oh, my God. It's unbelievable. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, President and CEO of the National Center for Policy Analysis. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Such a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure,
Thank
Leslie.
you.